He's been late. He might not come back. But I have in studio with me a really great guest. He's been here countless of times. I might as well just call him a fave because he's been joining us that much. So, good morning to Jonel Powell. Jonel, how are you?
I am doing well. Good morning to you. I was just going to say, if I'm not a fave by now, and walk out the studio.
No. You're definitely a fave. You are definitely a fave. I told somebody that you would be my guest today, and I was like, John, I love your show, bye. I was like, well, I ask him to join me from time to time, and he never not does it unless he's busy, which is not really a thing
No,
right
but
now.
I do love the show. It's a fantastic show. It's good to see two young people doing something positive and really making an impact on a lot of people tuning in. And so, I'm always happy to be a part of something positive.
Well, we appreciate that. But, Janelle, how have you been?
I'm good. I'm actually quite rested.
That is good. I know for the last couple of months, can't even say weeks, months, you've been on your face doing things, trying to get ready for the past election. And so I'm happy to hear that you actually finally got to rest. You probably really needed that. And so how have things been since the election last week?
I think it's just about 2 weeks
Wow.
now. Things have been quiet. It's fun where you go from all the excitement and the hype, and you're always on the go, to just peace and quiet now, and to have the ability to take a couple of weeks and just rest and sleep and rejuvenate and catch yourself. So that's really what I've been doing since elections, and just sort of winding down from all of that excitement.
Must be nice. So how have things been on the road? What have your supporters been saying? How are they feeling now that the election has passed?
Well, I think they're naturally disappointed with the result and the way things turned out. But that's part of life, and they're still very positive. And the first thing they say is, well, this just time to start getting ready for the next one.
Can y'all please let the people rest? Give them some time, please.
Well, these are what the supporters are saying. But generally, I think they're still very much upbeat, and is really just about moving on to the next one. Whenever that is. But
Hopefully 2027.
Hopefully 2027 and not before. But you never know. I mean, in 2020, I would never have thought I'd have been back in election 2 years later. But
Lots of us didn't think that would happen.
Exactly, and so that's just how life is. But we accept the results of the election. We wish the new government well, and we move forward with life.
So a lot of people, well, let me not say a lot of people, but I'll use the example of what I read yesterday. So yesterday I read an article. I was joined by your very bubbly host, Didi. I don't know if you got to hear that one.
Yeah, just a bit of it.
She was sad that she couldn't join us today, but we spoke about the fact that Uncle Dwyer Astafan made some comments. Did you get to read the comments?
No.
Okay, let me just give you a little insight to what those comments said. I should have them here on the WINNMedia page. Just 1 second. Okay, so I guess I could give you a synopsis while I look for it. Oh, found it. Okay, so he basically said that the leadership of the People's Action Movement is coming into question following its loss in the National Assembly elections held Friday, August 5th. On Wednesday, he made some comments, and he suggested that the PAM Party may require new leadership and will have to reconsider refreshing and rebranding to recapture support. I'll just read you a little bit of what he said. It says, I think it's fair to say that time and again, he demonstrated that he was not made of the stuff of leaders. far less being made of the stuff of prime ministers. Just my honest observation. Nothing personal. At the time, Mr. Sean Richards himself has to be at or approaching the realization that he is pretty much at the end of his road as PAM's party leader and as a parliamentarian, and he must be losing his appetite for all of this. He must be looking to move on in life, so for these and other reasons, PAM will have to reconsider refreshing and rebranding if it is to recapture the enormous amount of ground which it has lost by its own doing and by the doings of Timothy Harris. So what do you say to comments like those?
Well, that is Mr. Astafan's opinion. I don't necessarily share it. I completely support Sean Richards as the leader of the People's Action Movement. Obviously, we have lost some ground. The recent election results show that. And as a party, we do have need to have some introspection and to do some work. I mean, that's what any political party does after an unsuccessful election campaign. And so, whatever it is we need to do, we will do to ensure that we are in a better position and we come up with better results come the next election, whenever that is. While it is true that, PAM as a faction within Team Unity was one of the players that sort of forced the election. We did it on a very principled stand, and just up to last night I was saying to somebody, I accept the results of the election, but if I had to do what I did again, I would absolutely do it again because I know I did the right thing. And if it means I had to take one for the team, and the team meaning the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, to get rid of what I thought was a prime minister that was not acting in the best interest of the people, then I did the right thing. And regardless of what the election result was after that, I did the right thing. And I think people like Sean Richards believes the same thing. And so, as a party, we will rebuild and move on, as we have done before. It's not the first time PAM has lost. We've come back and we've gone into government twice already, and so it is what it is.
Well, we're joined by our friends over in Antigua. He has been listening keenly.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning, so how are you doing?
From St. John's, Antigua. I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm
just
well.
to introduce yourself to our listeners, just so that they know the voice they've been hearing.
My name is Jonel Powell. I'm the chairman of the People's Action Movement, and I was the candidate for the People's Action Movement in constituency number 2 in our recent elections. I went into the election as the incumbent, but I did not come out the victor this time, and so that is basically who I am.
Right. Well, Antiguans would know that because the only seat that PAM won was that of Sean Richards, yeah?
Correct.
All right. I don't know if we missed this particular question. I know that you were speaking and giving support to your political leader, i.e. the Honorable Sean Richards, which, I would expect as the party chairman. The question, though, that I have to start the ball rolling, so to speak, is, has there been that time of introspection to sit down and figure out where the party went wrong, why your party, your message did not resonate with the voters the way you wanted those messages to resonate with the voters?
Yes, we have started that process, and I don't think it's a one-off meeting type of process. Okay. So we have started that process. Certainly, as a team, we've come together and did a post-mortem, and I think it is for us now to, over the course of the next few weeks to months, to really sit with the national executive, the various constituency executives, and do that on a more national level. I know individual constituencies have done that. And so it's a process, but yes, we have started that.
Okay, and just a quick follow-up. is there any regret within the halls of the PAM that, perhaps there should have been more patience exercised? Because, to sum it all up, PAM was not happy. Of course, Mark Brantley was not happy. And so, that came out into the public domain, pulled support from the Prime Minister, and he essentially pressed the nuclear button. And now all of you are out of government. So the question is, looking back, could you all have handled it a little differently?
Yeah, I think looking back, to have the benefit of hindsight is significant. But
Yes.
But looking back, yeah, there are one or two things that I think we could have done differently. But in terms of the decision that we made, I think we made the right decision at the right time, despite what the election outcome was. At the end of the day, the People's Action Movement is about putting people first. And as I was just saying to Jade, we took a principled stand. And if it meant us taking one for the team being the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, then we succeeded in getting rid of a prime minister who was not acting in the best interest of the people of this country. For me, politics was never always about just being in power and winning. It was about being in a position to make a positive change in the lives of people. And I think we achieved that to a great extent. Would we have preferred to have been in government? Absolutely. But you roll the dice and you accept the results and the consequences.
All right. May I be permitted to be devil's advocate and ask, well...
Of course.
Absolutely.
What were those mistakes? You said that, yes, there's some things you'd do differently. If you don't mind, I hope you won't be telling tales out of school, but if you don't mind telling us, what do you think those, let's say the top two, or three mistakes, approaches that you took that in hindsight, you should have not taken or taken differently or done differently?
Well, I think, generally speaking, there was perhaps the issue of the explanation of why we did what we did and when we did it. In hindsight and based on discussions and feedback from persons, perhaps we could have handled that differently or done it differently in terms of our speaking notes, for example. And generally our approach to the breakup, so to speak, and by that I mean, it in December we are in Parliament and moving a budget and everybody's on a team and smiling and looking good, and then 2-3 months later,
right,
you have these issues, and so even perhaps how we transition from A to B could have been done differently. But again, benefit of hindsight.
Yeah, because Jade will tell you that I think I offered a prediction that the Labour Party was going to be the beneficiary of this, because you have an opposition which is essentially comprises of two or three parties, or opponents to the Labour Party, which is like the legacy party in St. Kitts, as is the case here in Antigua and many parts of the OACS. It's going to be difficult, and you're essentially going to be splitting the vote amongst yourselves.
Absolutely.
That was what I expected. So why wasn't that calculus adhered to? Because this outcome was not, I don't think, I didn't have to be a Peter Wickham to predict this.
Right. Well, as you said, without talking too many tales out of school, we assessed all the different options that were before us. We knew what the potential consequences were, but we felt at the point in time that it was what we needed to do and when. Sometimes you just have to make a decision, and we chose to do that. We knew that there was a strong possibility of our votes being split. But you know what? To be honest, because of the way in which that the team unity sort of disintegrated, there was nothing more or nothing else we could have done to change the outcome. At the end of the day, the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, and this is not just on St. Kitts, you'd have seen similar trends even on Nevis in terms of results there. The people just sort of rejected anything that had to do with team unity. And I get it, I understand. I may not necessarily agree, but that is what they wanted. Exactly, that is what they wanted. And you really just have to accept that and to move on.
Yeah. All right. You sound like a statesman.
Thank you.
Is that a fair characterization of your approach to politics? Hey, even if it means I'm going to be out of power, I think I'm going to do this based on principle and not just about being in power ad nauseam, forever, in perpetuity.
Well, that's what I try to be. I said it a while ago. I didn't get into politics to be in power. Although, I mean, you're going to win elections and to be in government. And so you're always in the best position to make change. And that's what I wanted to do, to make positive change. I didn't like the way in which things were going under the past Labour administration. And so I wanted to make a positive difference. And so I just try to keep my politics clean. I never make personal attacks and all of that. And at the end of the day, it's about what is in the best interest of the people. And yeah, I might not have won the election, I lost my seat, but what was in the best interest of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis was to get rid of what was a very illegitimate government and a Prime Minister in Timothy Harris that was not acting in the best interest of the people. And so I don't see it as a complete loss.
Okay.
Yeah. May I jump in, please, Darren?
Yes, I was just about to say, before you say a hug in your show. Go right ahead.
So when you guys, going back to before the election itself, when you guys wrote that letter to the Governor General, what decision were you looking for from him?
We wrote that letter having had the benefit of a legal opinion from a QC out of England. And we essentially asked him to utilize a discretion that we think, based on that legal opinion, was given to him under the Constitution to change the Prime Minister, bearing in mind the circumstances at the time, which were that on the government side, you had another person other than the Prime Minister who commanded a majority of the support of elected members in Parliament in the person of Sean Richards. And so that essentially is one of the things that we had asked, or essentially what we had asked him to do in that letter.
So just taking a pause because we have a new face, just introducing who is supposed to be co-host, who is late. Jonel, I think I have to fire him at this point.
I'll keep note of that.
Remember, well, yeah.
Remember, he'd be the second person to get fired in the studio.
Oh, yeah, that is true.
Maybe in the first.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. So we have Mr. Gawain Fritz joining us. Gawain, you can say good morning to our listeners and viewers over in Antigua. Darren, you look confused by Jonel's statement.
No. I'm not confused. I was just trying to understand. Well, actually, the question on my mind was, where is Azem?
Oh, Azem is away. He's overseas.
Oh, okay.
So I've been having special guest hosts join me this week, and Gawain being one of them.
And tell us, Gawain, good morning.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Wonderful.
And I welcome and good morning to, I don't think I said good morning to my friends and family in St. Kitts.
No, you did not. You just jumped straight in.
I know. I was naughty this morning. But yes, good morning to all my friends and family and friends in St. Kitts. And I hope that, everybody's all happy and pleased with the outcome of what happened. At least, it seemed to have been a straightforward election. There's no court case, right?
Yes, that's a question that I had for you, Jonel. Are we going to court? Because that's a trend here.
Well, I can tell you, I won't be going to court. No, but I don't anticipate any petitions or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I think Darren said it quite rightly, it was a clear-cut election, and if somebody hasn't, I encourage them to just accept the results and let's move forward.
I agree. So what about your relationship with the Honorable Mac Brantley over in Nevis? Have you guys spoken after the election cycle? Is there any plans to continue the coalition that you guys have built over the last 7 years? What is the plans moving forward between the People's Action Movement Party and the CCM Party in Nevis?
Well, we have spoken, and I wouldn't say that there are any issues between the two parties. We made our plans very clear to the people prior to the election that we intended to form a coalition government. However, that had worked out. In terms of how we go forward, I think it's still early days, and it would be a bit premature today to make a determination now as to what we do from what we don't do. When the dust settles, we'll see, what is in the best interest of both parties going forward. It may be to join together, it may be to say, hey, let's go at it separately, and if needs be, we have a conversation after the next election. But for now, I think it's too early to make those types of decisions.
Okay, well, we see that you guys basically went into election trying to get away from the Honorable Timothy Harris. But now we see a situation where, because of the election cycle, the opposition bench is now made up of the Honorable Sean Richards, the Honorable Matt Brantley and his team, and Timothy Harris. Have you spoken to Sean about that dynamic? How do you guys feel about that dynamic? Someone told us that Mac would now be the leader of the opposition, as I am not sure how that works. Maybe you can give me some insight into that. But how is the feeling going forward, knowing that you guys tried to get away from that dynamic and still kind of ended up back in the same place?
Well, let me start off by saying it's going to be interesting looking at Parliament going forward.
Very much so.
To see the three of them sitting over on the opposition benches together. I certainly will be tuned in.
I will as well.
But it's interesting. But in terms of leader of the opposition, I'm not sure. Let me put it this way: the leader of the opposition is the person on the opposition benches who commands the majority of support of those not supporting the government. So basically, who has the most support amongst the opposition parliamentarians?
Wouldn't that be
in
Mac?
this case, Mark Brantley, as the leader of CCM, who has three out of 5 seats on the opposition, would be in pole position to be leader of the opposition. We have seen in the past where that has not necessarily happened. And so, like I said, there's still discussions, there's still things to be had. But let me put it this way: Mark Brantley ought to be the person based on just the law and the numbers. If there is some sort of accommodation, we'll see. But on the face of it, Mark Brantley ought to be the leader of the opposition.
And Sean hasn't expressed any feelings towards that to you?
No. I mean, if like I said, we have maintained the coalition. I would really leave that for, if there's to be a discussion, I think that's a discussion to be had between Mark and Sean. We know, for example, in the past where Sean had conceded leader of the opposition to Mark. That's something that's public, that everybody has spoken about. I would not say that there's an expectation of anything, but again, that is a discussion for them to have and to see what would be the best dynamic going forward in that respect.
Okay. Darren?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a similar question that was asked by Jade a moment ago, and that was if you've had any conversation with the former Prime Minister, leader of the People's Labour Party, Dr. Timothy Harris. Have you had any conversation with him at all since the election?
I think the last time I had a conversation with Timothy Harris, I think was the last time I attended cabinet, which was a few months ago.
Okay.
So,
Right.
no, the quick answer to that is no.
Okay. Any plans to perhaps
was
have
going
a
for that.
conversation with him? Because we're hearing all kinds of rumors in Antigua, yeah?
Oh, what's
you know,
those?
Tell us,
that he's
tell
not
us.
doing well, he's lost weight, people can't find him, you know. I don't know.
Well,
That's all political bluster, but yeah.
But he has been looking slim before the election, so I don't know if it's.
I will
if it's
admit
due
I've
to that.
lost a few pounds as well.
There you
So
go. Elections was good for everybody's diet.
I wasn't stressed, but I think the
The rigors of the campaign.
the rigors of the campaign, the walking and the door to door, you know, that does help in terms of the weight loss. But you know, for me at least, I see no reason to have or any need to have a discussion with him at this point in time. I can say I have spoken to Akila Byron Nisbet since. I have spoken to, I think, just about every candidate of the Labour Party,
So
other than
why not
the
the
Prime
former
Minister.
PM?
Well, like I said, I don't think I can't think of any need to have a conversation right now. I hold nothing personal against him.
Come on, Mr. Powell. You've spoken to everybody else except him.
No, well, I my relationship with the others is different
Okay.
than him. You know,
Fair enough.
when you think about the others, you know, the winning candidates on the Labour Party, Akila, we all have a different relation. These are people who I was in school with, who I grew up around and with, and so our relationship is very much different. And so that is why I would have reached out to the others. And you know, and the reality is, look, there's no sort of bad feeling between any of us. I don't have any bad feelings towards Timothy Harris. I didn't like what he was doing. I said it publicly. I don't hold anything personally against him. You know, if I walked down the road and he was he dropped down on the road, I would stop and help him like anybody else. You know, so.
Do you think he feels the same toward you and to the Honourable Sean Richards?
I think that's a question for him to answer.
I don't know. You might have a sense.
I don't know.
When somebody don't like you.
Yeah, well, sometimes you think they don't like you and they like you, and sometimes, as the election
versa.
showed, you think they like you, but they really like you.
Oh dear, this is very interesting. Very, very interesting. Anyway, Jade?
Yes. So have you spoken to the Honorable Marsha Henderson as yet? I know she is now the winner in your constituency. Is there any plans to assist her with the development of the community, even though you're not in power anymore? You may be able to assist, as you promised, the people of that community. So have you spoken to her as yet?
Yeah, I gave Marsha a call after the election and congratulated her. We had a really good conversation. Like I said, Marsha and I have been friends for years, and so you know that took nothing to do. You know, I think it was just natural, and I will always be there for the people. Constituency number 2, whether I am the representative or not, whether I'm in politics or not. I mean, I will always be there for them, and so I am prepared to step up and to step in when and where possible to help them.
Okay. I just have one more question before I take my leave. I can't believe this time has flown by so quickly, Jade. Lord have mercy. So I must, I think I would have mentioned that we have to leave around 20 minutes to 9. So if I may, at this point, just ask Mr. Powell, the current administration under the leadership of Dr. Terence Drew, are you happy with the cabinet selections? Are you happy with the signs that have been put out so far by this new administration? Do you think they're off to a good start, doing the right things?
I'm not sure if it would be fair for me to comment on on, for example, portfolio designations and that sort of thing. You know, that is some of it. You know, there's some obvious selections and some that were not so obvious. For example, you know, Dr. Jeffrey Hanley being named Minister of Education, that's expected. You know, and so I commend them, for example, on the appointment of Garth Wilkin as Attorney General. It is good to see a person who's not necessarily been politically affiliated coming from the private sector in a very important role, and we need a hell of a lot of work done to be appointed a young lawyer who you know is capable and has shown that. And so I commend them on making appointments like that. And you know, you've seen some young people being empowered so far, and it's early. I mean, the administration has literally the government has not been in for a week yet, and so it's early to judge. But you know, you see some good signs. But we'll see what happens going forward. I wish them the best. At the end of the day, whether is the government you voted for or not is your government, and if a government fails, the people are the ones who will suffer the most. And so that is not in my interest to see my people suffer. So I wish them all the best, and we see what happens.
Jonel Powell, you strike me as a statesman.
Aww.
Thank you, sir.
You strike me as a statesman. Hopefully, what happens off camera and off radio is what it is.
I can vouch for him.
There you go. There you go. I try to be the same person. I think I'm the same person on stage as I am off stage, and you know, some people like that, some people don't like that, but I am who I am, and I try to stay true to that and to, you know, the right principles that should guide me through life.
Before I go, Jay, do you want a little bit of Antigua politics?
Yes,
yourself
please
and-
give me a
Yes,
little
because
update,
it's
'cause
heating
you've
up
been
over
all
there
through
now.
with soap.
It's heating up. I've been falling.
Well, last night, the National Youth Parliament of Antigua and Barbuda hosted a town hall meeting. And it was held in Potter's Village, which is in the St. George's constituency. And it featured the UPP candidate, Algernon Serpent Watts, who is very closely affiliated with this radio station, actually. But yes, he's the UPP candidate. He is, the incumbent, who is Dean Jonas, the Honorable Dean Jonas. He is a current cabinet member for the ruling administration. And then you have Kelton Dalso, who is of the DNA, which is a smaller party here in Antigua, but certainly in opposition to the incumbent Antigua Labour Party. Anyway, they had a town hall last night, and a release was just sent to me. Apparently, the DNA candidate was not impressed with certain comments that were made. And so I'm just going to read a little bit of what the presser has to say. The Honorable Dean Jonas, upon rising to address the crowd, in his opening remarks, made certain references to me, that's Kelton Dalso, and my tertiary degree, a Bachelor of Laws, LLB, and insinuated that the government of Antigua and Barbuda, and specifically the Gaston Brown-led administration, contributed or funded my tertiary education, or that they deserved credit for my accomplishment. He did this repeatedly. Many persons got the impression that I made a request to the government for assistance and my studies were funded by the state. Let me now set the record straight. I have never approached this or any administration in any official or unofficial capacity to make any request for financial or other type of support to pursue or complete my LLB or any other study. I was never made any offer by any government or for any funding or other support for my education. Neither have I approached or solicited such assistance from any businesses or other persons outside of my household. My family and I have made every sacrifice in support of my ambition to complete my LLB, and I did it alone. While I am proud of my academic accomplishments, I take this opportunity to completely disassociate myself from the disparaging and acidine statements made by the Honorable Dean Jonas, which were aimed at Algernon Watts, because he is not the holder of a tertiary degree. I found the insinuations of the... Yeah, I tell you it gets spicy. I found the insinuations of the Honorable Dean Jonas to be careless, callous, and a cheap attack on Mr. Watts, and they indicate to all St. Georgians who are not holders of a tertiary degree the low esteem in which they are being held by the current representative. I wonder how many scholarships or other state assistance the Honorable Dean Jonas has facilitated for the young people during his tenure. I wish to apologize to the wonderful constituents of St. George for such a crude display of leadership. I hope that the Honorable Dean Jonas, on reflection, would see it fit to offer an appropriate apology to myself, the organizers, and the constituents of St. George for his disingenuous and poor behavior that he exhibited. Signed, Kelton Dalso. Blap. There you go.
Well,
So, to the point, yes, the campaign is hotting up, so to speak, as the
that
Brits
means
would say.
election is near.
Yeah, when do you anticipate the election to be? Because I've heard dates
you
as
know,
early as October, November, but as late as next year.
As late as next year. My bet, this is my bet, it's going to be very late this year, and very late this year could put us into Christmas territory, which I don't know why they would want to do that. So I don't know if it's going to be this year. I think it's going to be next year, because there are a number of issues that remain on promises that remain unfulfilled by the ruling administration, specifically the water issue. Water distribution to the homes of citizens of Antigua and Barbuda is a big issue. It is big not just because the UPP say it's big. Every cabinet note that comes out, including the one I got yesterday morning around the same time, there's a matter of fact, it's usually the top note, because they realize that they're under the gun with this water issue, because they campaigned in 2014 on the water issue, and they gave UPP, who was in power then, licks up and down this country about their management of the water issue, only now to come and have a situation where they seem to be just as bad, some might say worse. Now, the drought has been protracted. Yes, it is the worst drought perhaps that we've seen and so forth. And the Labour Party will say, well, look, there are other countries that are going through the same thing. You know, it's not all our fault, blah, blah, blah. But of course, you know, the UPP and the DNA is having none of it. And there are people in this country who are really suffering. I mean, every morning I get WhatsApps about, you know. So I'm saying all of that to say that the water problem does not appear to be substantially resolved. And I don't think that the Prime Minister is going to call the election until at least there's some sense that, you know, we've turned a corner. That's
Right.
that's my feeling. It may sound simple, but let me tell you, wars have been fought and will be fought over this issue of water. It's essential. It's a part of our existence. We can't live without water. So when a housewife can't wash her clothes, clean her house, have elderly parents, we're still in a pandemic. Water is important for cleanliness and so on and so forth. I personally don't see him calling it before March next year. That's my bet, or early next year. That's me. I may be wrong. I mean, at the end of the day, the Prime Minister has to choose out of his back pocket, front pocket, whatever. But let me put it this way, if I were in his shoes, I don't know if I'd want to call it. No, that's me. And then people are complaining about electricity, and then unemployment. Tourist season is low. It's not going to pick up until, you know, the usual November, December, January. Why you want to? I don't see it. I don't know. I'm not Peter Wickham, though. I'm not, what's his name, Lindley Winter, or any of these prognosticators and pollsters and people who do the analysis. But my sense, it probably would be a dangerous thing for him to call it sooner rather than later. So he might wait till later. That's my bet.
But
That's
then again, he's the world boss, right?
Well, that's what they call it. And I don't hear him objecting, so he probably likes the moniker. Anyway, folks, I got to go. Thanks so much. It's fun.
Good talking to you. Good talking to you. All the best to the people in Antigua.
Mr. Powell, all the best. And Jade, to your co-host.
Gawain?
remind me. Yes, who came? Well, I stay now to y'all's story. Have a
Please do
wonderful
that. Please
one.
do that. Have a good day.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. So, Jonel, back to you now. Having gone through this last election cycle, what are some of the things that you think we should be able to change in the upcoming election, whenever that is? We've had a lot of talk here about electoral reform and the way that we cast ballots and all of these things and overseas voters. So what are your thoughts on some of these issues, and how do you think we can better fix them to have a much smoother election coming up?
These issues that I thought should have been changed, years and years and elections ago. I certainly did advocate during my short 2-year stint in government. I did advocate strongly for electoral reform, and it was persons dragged their feet on that. But honestly, the way in which we conduct elections in this country is archaic and is ridiculous. And it's like we just do it because, well, this is how it's always been done. It's time to move forward. It's time to change the way in which we conduct our elections, the ballots we use, the rules that surround the ballots. How can even the way the count, this thing where you have to collect all the boxes and take it into a central counting station, and hence you have you have results coming in the next day and things like that. I could tell, I could tell you at about 9:30, 10 o'clock on election night, when the first of the results were coming in for constituency number 4, people still voting in Central Bastille.
Oh, wow.
And so there's a lot of work. I don't think it's difficult. I don't think it's rocket science, but there's a lot of work we need to do to really clean up our electoral system, and that's just me talking about election day. We still have a lot of work to do in terms of clean up the list, the way in which persons are added and removed from lists, who can register from who can't register, and what are the qualifications. These are things that really need to be addressed, cleaned up, and I think help in terms of our general election system.
Yeah, I don't understand why we're still in big 2022 having people having to write down in a book lists of names, and people who want to oversee these lists can't use the book because,
exactly.
It's ridiculous.
Exactly. Even constituency boundaries and things like that. You have a constituency number 8 that has 8,000 something registered voters, and then I think number 5 is a little over 3,000. Number 10 is even less than that. I think my box 3 is bigger than the whole of constituency number 10 in Nevis. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of our electoral reform, and I hope that it's a case where we really get some independent thinking and involvement, and not just. And I'm not accusing anybody and saying that this is what is going to be done in the same. We just need a real independent process going forward. Look, let's put everything in order, and let the people decide that therefrom.
So someone is asking why was nothing done to change these in the last 7 years? Well, granted, you've only been in there for 2 years, but
What I can say is, like I said, I did advocate quite a bit for electoral reform. I always believe that that's not something you wait until the last minute to do. We saw where, for example, I think it was 2010 and 2015 elections where the Labour administration tried to change boundaries at the last time, and so on. The court itself spoke about the need for consultation and things like that. And so I think these are things that you should really do early in a term. Obviously, there were persons within the government who didn't see the need to start that process. You kept hearing excuses like, oh, well, let's wait for the census to be done and things like that, and assuming that the next election would have been in 2025.
We should never assume, clearly.
But none of the things we just spoke about, except for maybe the boundaries, have to do with a census. For example, you look at an election in Anguilla. When I lived in Anguilla, that was a long time ago, no boy. But when I lived in Anguilla, I remember being there for an election, and literally the count was you go down by the courthouse, and they literally take up a ballot and say. And they show it to everybody, and the public could come in and look at this count. Okay, 1 for Gavin, 1 for Jade, 1 for Gavin, 1 for Gavin. Now, when you look at the elections, and it's all electronic. And so that I see them churn out, they put in these machines and they churn out the results in minutes.
Which is what I assumed where we would be
But
in
that's where we should be.
2022.
And that is where we should be. And so I hope that the new administration will see the benefit of doing it early. I'm here to help if they need assistance with it.
Send in an application, see what can happen.
Well, you never know, because you heard that being talked about a lot. As you say, way back, and we 5 years, 7 years, unity were in, and you hear it again, and we're still at the same crossroads whereby we don't have results coming in until late. So I guess, as you say, we fix what we could fix, like the easy things or the simpler things. I mean, don't say the easy thing. The simpler things that we could fix now, we probably look at those, try to get those started, and then look at as you say, the boundaries, because I guess census is finishing up, so I guess we probably won't know the final numbers until maybe next year. But then you start to work on the boundaries. But the simple things that we can fix, I think we should get those out now before 2027. And again, we can't say 2027 because when we were saying 2025 and
Before the next election.
Before the next election, so we go with before the next election.
Yeah.
And another thing that I realized was a hot topic during the election cycle is the overseas voters. What are your thoughts on the fact that it seems like some people only come home to vote because they're giving tickets? Do you think that is fair to the people living in the Federation? Granted, everyone who is a Kittitian or Division is afforded that right to vote, but people who just come home based on the fact that a party gives them a ticket, or that only comes home during the 2 days of election. What are your thoughts on that? And another question I had was that whole thing of giving people tickets. Isn't that some sort of bribery? Am I
Treating.
Okay, I was just wondering if I was thinking about it wrong. But I always felt like if you have to give somebody a ticket to vote, it is kind of buying their vote.
Well, myself and Pam have a long time ago made our position clear in terms of overseas voting and all of that. And what we had very clearly expressed, even while in government and sought to put it into legislation, is that we believe that there should be a residence period or requirement for a person to register to vote in a particular constituency. The reality is we vote on a constituency basis, and if you're to vote in register to vote and vote in a constituency, you should at least live in a constituency. And so whether you're overseas or not, whether you live in Nevis, if you want to register in Central Basti, you should be living in Central Basti at the time at which you register to vote. If whether you go to Nevis or like us out to New York, and so that has been our position. That is nothing against it, and I mean, if you go a little deeper, yes, fundamentally there is something wrong where you're living outside, and whether it's you living in New York and coming to St. Kitts and Nevis to vote, or you live in Keon but you want to come to Central to vote. I do fundamentally have an issue with persons who are not living in the constituency making decisions for the constituents of a particular constituency and then leaving, and you end up with a representative that you didn't really want, but because of the influx of votes from somewhere else, that's what you stuck with. You spoke about persons who only come home when it's time to vote. We saw a phenomena in, I think it's 2010 general elections where persons came to St. Kitts and Nevis to vote, and it was the first time that they had actually ever set foot in St. Kitts and Nevis, where they changed the law. I think in 2007 they changed the law so that you could register to vote outside, and if your grandparents were from St. Kitts and Nevis, you could register to vote. And so you had persons coming from England, they'd never been to St. Kitts and Nevis before, but they get a ticket to come down to vote, and that was the first time. And there's something wrong with that.
I think so too, because it can't be right for you to never have never having lived in St. Kitts and Nevis, never been to St. Kitts and Nevis, then deciding what government St. Kitts and Nevis gets. Because, to be honest, those things won't affect you.
Yeah.
You don't come here, you don't live here, you don't spend time here. You come once a year and then that's it. But you're making decisions that can affect a whole federation for 5 years or however long the election period is. So I don't think that's fair to the people who live here.
And well, not to cut you off, Gavin, but just to make the point that, persons who live outside will say, well, I don't help out my family home. I send back remittances. I own property and thing. And, well, we have people living here. We have American citizens who live here, they own property, they're paying taxes, they actually live here and they can't vote. Sure. you know.
Yeah, because you do get the argument a lot. But I don't support it, never. And it's not even party lines, it's just, I just don't agree with it, right? But I have listened to persons who have said the same thing that you just said, Jonel, whereby they said, they pay taxes back home. They might have land, so they pay house and land tax. They have whatever, they send money, that kind of stuff. So they contribute in a way. And their feeling is that, and I could understand it from in a point of view whereby their feeling is that, okay, I contribute in certain ways, so I should at least have that part to vote. And I was like, okay, I agree with that. But let it be then that you decide that you're going to take money out of your own pocket to come home and vote. Not the whole thing of like a party paying for you to come home and vote. Because then it's like, some persons only come every 5 years. If we have election every 5 years, that's when the incentives every 5 years. It's not like the persons who go, oh, we got carnival, they're going to come down and visit, or we got music festival, come down and visit, stuff like that. Some persons only show up to vote because a party or some party pay for them to come home and vote. And I really don't think that's fair. I honestly don't think that's fair. So I don't know how, I really don't know, because it's very ticklish to how to deal with it, because you don't want to be denying persons, the chance to vote, because that's their constitutional right. Everybody have a right to vote. So you don't want to be denying persons the chance to vote. And many discussions have been had of how do we do it? Do we have like a constituency that is called maybe quote unquote overseas constituency? How do we do it whereby these persons still have that right to vote? And maybe just make it in a way whereby, okay, you want to vote outside. So you don't have to you voted in that constituency, so you're not voting in this quote-unquote constituent, if you've never lived there.
Right.
Because that's the whole thing. It's kind of unfair that you vote in a constituency that you never lived.
But a lot of the people who you hear making that argument are green card holders in the States, and as a green card holder, as far as I'm aware, you can't vote in the States.
No, you cannot. You have to be a
citizen. So they're actually living in the States, paying taxes in the States. Yes. Maybe they own property, but they can't vote there.
Still can't
so
vote.
Right. And so the argument is not consistent. But I do get it. I do understand it. I've never been one. You raised the thought of this overseas constituency, so to speak. I've never supported it personally. I think it goes on a slippery slope. What would be the purpose? Is it justifiable to, how do you do it? I'm not sure if there are examples around the world where it's done, but I don't know. I just think we're dealing with St. Kitts and Nevis. We're dealing with outside of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Exactly. And that's where it comes down to. You live here. Well, it's so tricky. You have, because then if you mention the word interest, then anyone could. They're going to be a broad-based thing whereby anybody could say, well, I have interest and I got land, I got whatever. But as someone is saying here in life, they have land, they have bank accounts, whatever, but they don't vote. Because they just don't feel like it's right for them they don't live here.
And there are many of them who feel that way, of course.
To be making an impact for persons who live here. We got to live with it. Whether we support the government, we have to live with it. And there are going to be things that going to impact us, And persons outside won't be impacted by those same things because they won't be living here, but they made a decision for the government, to be over. So it's tricky, but I really don't know. But personally, I don't support it. I don't know how it's going to be dealt with, because I don't know if it can even be like something like that. Public can't even be dealt with in one term of a government. you know. So I really don't know, but as it goes back,
it can be, but whether it is something that the government will want to do, and we know that the Labour Party has in recent times been very vocal in terms of the advocacy for overseas voting, and so.
Well, what they can do is probably work and say, okay, let's have, everyone know where they stand. They said, we are for it. But how can we make it work whereby the majority of persons feel comfortable with it? You know, and then maybe have some sort of consultation, because the party itself might be for it, but everyone in, I don't
right, if there's consultation and the wide cross-section society says, look, we don't want this anymore.
Yeah, or we want it, whatever the case is.
It puts pressure on the party to go against that.
Because then you must, because say for example, like majority person, you have 70% say, okay, they're for it. I might not be for it, but then I'll just be like, okay, fine. You know, because majority rule, so you 70% say they want it, then fine, you just adjust, you go accordingly. But to me, it still needs to be tweaked in a way whereby it doesn't leave a sour taste after it happens. It just needs to be tweaked in a way whereby it just doesn't leave a sour taste. And if it means that, persons could vote, but the party won't get involved in bringing these people in, then fine.
I find it interesting that people advocate for the whole overseas voter thing as much as they do, because then on the other hand you have people saying, well, even if you live here, if you're not from St. Kitts, you're not supposed to be able to vote. If you are somebody from a different island, you shouldn't be afforded the opportunity to vote in a country, even though that person actually lives here. Whether they apparently some people were having an issue because they said some people were just arriving and being able to vote and all of these things, but it would be the same thing, because if you were saying people are just arriving and affording the same ability to vote, wouldn't it then say that overseas voters shouldn't have that opportunity? Because some people just coming just to vote, not coming to live here, not coming to do anything here, but just to vote and then leave. So why would you have an issue with people who you deem as foreigners or people not?
Because I'm from here.
Yes, but what makes you from here? If you have a passport, if your argument is any citizen...
My mother from here.
Then you're contradicting yourself in that argument, because you're telling us if you have a passport, if you're a citizen, you should be able to vote. But then you're telling us, if they're from a different country, they shouldn't be able to vote. But they have a passport, they have citizenship. So what is the difference?
I think just as people, we make these convenient arguments. It's convenient for us when it's for us, and when it's not for us, is we come up with something. But I think you're right.
Yeah, it's just strange. And somebody's saying it's because they have family here. Well, those people who come in here to live will have families here as well.
I just think even going beyond elections and voting, we really need to be more honest with ourselves and accepting of persons. The same way we have persons coming here to live and try and make a better life for themselves here. The same people making this argument about overseas voters, they're doing the same thing in the States or Canada, England, or wherever they are. They're living in somebody else's country, but they expect to get the same rights and privileges as citizens here. But we want to deny persons coming in here. So we really need to be a bit more balanced and equitable in the way in which we think these things through, because it runs deeper than just voting. Look at even housing. How them Spanish could come here and get house in front of locals? Well, they have the same passport as you. They're paying the same taxes as you. They live here for the last 15 years. The children born and go to school here. So nothing for them.
Somebody saying living in a country doesn't make you a citizen. So would that not apply to overseas voters?
To all the green card holders who can't vote where they live in.
If you're telling me if these arguments frustrate me because it's very contradictory.
The convenient arguments.
Yeah, it's like you're only trying to justify why we're bringing in all these people to vote. But people who live here shouldn't be afforded the same opportunity to vote because you don't see them as born Kittitians. And I don't think that's fair, because if you go to somebody else's country, you would not want that same reality. You would not want somebody to tell you, oh, you can't be able to do these things here because you're not from here. You would feel discriminated against. So why is it we are so comfortable doing it when it comes to our country, but living in other people's country or visiting other people's country, it's fine for you? But I have a comment. Somebody said, no party will support any legislation to deny citizens who reside overseas from voting in any election. I have no issue against overseas voters at all, as I know of many who make a significant contribution to the country's development. They do way more than people who live here. They are individuals who reside overseas who sustain households here. They feel the squeeze just like we do. They pay mortgages here, bills, school fees, taxes, and so much more. They donate to health, education, and more. In a nutshell, we have people who do not live here but make a great contribution to the country. They must have the right to vote to elect the government they think will do the job. And the irony is that most people who make an issue about overseas voters are not even registered, and those who are refuse to vote because Jonel may not have said good morning or how are you.
There you go. Yeah, but that's I think the same point we're just making in terms of contributions. But then again, are you going to then say, well, okay, the qualification to register to vote is based on your contributions and your you know how much you spend? Mm-hmm. Well, then 75% of the population won't be able to register to vote then.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And so at the end of the day, I think we need to just stick to our residency requirement. Mm-hmm. You live in a constituency, you vote in constituency, end of story. Mm-hmm. That's just me. Mm-hmm.
Lots of people going to agree and not agree. But let's just touch one more thing. I think we're kind of running out of time here. But so as the past education minister, one big issue that everybody had was the whole Bastille High debacle. In your humble opinion, do you think that Bastille High, where it was, could be salvaged, and or should we just forget about it? And if that is the case, then what do we do with that space? Because if we're telling people that that space isn't good enough for a school, then that means it shouldn't be good enough for anything else based on why it isn't good enough to be a school.
I think there's a lot of miseducation, misinformation in relation to the whole new Bastille High School and the new site and old site and all that. Do I think the old site can be salvaged for school? Me personally, I'd say no. I think we're too far gone. Mm-hmm. The only thing that is left to be done with the new site is to put out the tenders for the construction and the different contracts. Mm-hmm. Everything else has been done. Contracts have been signed, and to invalidate that now, I think puts us at risk of significant litigation, and the government could end up spending millions in damages as a result of breaking any contracts that are in place now in respect of the construction of a new Bastille School. A lot of money has been spent as well. I just see it as it has been used as a political football, but the elections done, politics done. It's an opportunity to build a state-of-the-art new school. Just do it. The argument, well, if the old site not good enough for the school, it can't be good enough for something else. I get that. As far as I know, they were supposed to do testing of the soil and different things to see if the levels are still the same, and to see if whatever has been done, I don't know the technicalities of it. The last time I inquired as the Minister of Education about that particular site, I was told that it was then under the auspices of sustainable development. Mm-hmm. So that's a whole other story. So, but the point is that site is there. In my mind, I had made recommendations and supported plans. There are actually plans that had been proposed to expand Warner Park into that space for the purposes, for example, expanding the Len Harris Cricket Academy into that space, adding apartments or dorms there for visiting teams and things like that. an Olympic-sized swimming pool, so we could start swimming, competitive swimming in St. Kitts and Nevis and things like that. There were proposals to build a parking garage on that site on the western end, which would include not just the parking garage, but you'd have little commercial spaces. There's a proposal to include like a little market area in that space, shuttle service, a station, a terminal for shuttle service to shuttle you around Basti and then back up to the parking garage. So there were so many different things that have been proposed. I'm sure there are other ideas that persons have that we can use for a space like that. So
it's interesting. It's, I don't know. We've
Go ahead, stress you out.
Because what happened? That's the school we went to. I know you didn't go there. Sorry, you went Washi. Sorry,
I don't.
Okay, sorry.
Washi?
She went.
Oh, junior high.
My school is still standing. My school is still standing and has not moved. So let's not go down this dark path.
She went Washi, so she don't understand. But I mean, like a lot of the arguments and being part of class chats and stuff like that, it has been because what this school has meant to us. Going to Basti, it means something. Pinky piano non-hobbiness, that's how it means something. So...
All the people still talk about grammar school.
You see, and you've gone way back than that, So it means something, you go there, went there from 3rd farm to 6th farm, So, but then I understand the whole damages if we have to go through the whole thing. But what the new government can probably do is look at get a test done, so and put all the facts out there, and so persons could say, can it be salvaged? Can it not be salvaged? Whatever the case is, because as I say, when you're outside, you can say a lot of things, and then when you get inside, and you realize,
exactly. And I think that horse has bolted already, and is in our best interest to repurpose the old site now and do something with it, and not just leave it abandoned.
It is literally prime land in Bastia that has just been there sitting down, wasting away for years.
Because I think really one of the good options would be if push comes to shove and they can't move the school and it's not going to be moved, is really, you have, as you say, like a parking lot, a parking structure. And you persons park there, get shuttled into Bastia, have other events there, because it is perfect prime land. I mean, it sits right in the middle of everything else.
Right.
And we do need parking for, especially when we have events in Warner Park. So we do need parking for stuff like that. So why not make some money off of it? I think the hurtful thing is just having, seeing what was, once an iconic structure.
I agree. Sometimes you sit in Warner Park or you're in Warner Park and you look over and you remember your days over there, and you just look at the grass growing up and you think, boy, that's really a shame. Like I said, I had inquired about it as Minister of Education was told. Otherwise, I eventually did just break off the chain off the gate and cut some of the grass and use it for parking for, I think, cricket one time. But
you got to do stuff like that. Use it.
Yeah, but we have to use it. We have to use it, and I think the time is now. Let's forget all the politics. Let's say elections done gone, Labour done win. Let's forget the politics.
To be honest, no matter what it is used for, people will have an issue because they will still be in their mind, if a school couldn't go there, why something else is able to go there. But we have to move past that. That ship has sailed.
Exactly.
Long time.
It has, to the point that it almost dark as the school about to build. So let's just move forward and try to figure out what we can now do with that space, because it's there, it has to be used. So, Jonel, what about the little prison that we were supposed to get?
You're asking the wrong person about that. I can't tell you. Think about that prison.
I don't know, maybe you had a little insights,
The only thing I could tell you is that we had approved the project, like we approved so many other projects. Well, in government, nothing ever happened until after I left. So I don't know the details. I've never been to this site, so I don't know how much, if anything, has been done.
You see, that's very interesting, because I feel like during the election cycle, it was made to seem like a lot of people didn't know what was happening with this prison. It was never signed off. Only one person who knew what it was, because it was called the Timothy Harris prison. And I kept thinking, but this is something that would have had to gone through cabinet. Like there must have been some type of approval.
Well, there was approval for the concessions and all of that. Again, is being built by a private company, and so certain concessions and requests were made, and yeah, those were approved as, like I said, a number of different projects that come before cabinet that you agree to in principle. What actually happens in practice is something different, and so. For example, at that point in time, as far as I am aware, up to when I left the government, there was no sort of contract between government and the developers in any way.
And it wasn't priced at $2 billion at the time?
Not as far as I'm aware.
Okay, because I know a lot of people have been trying to figure out the dynamics of that, and especially because, again, it seemed to be pushed as, well, we don't know what's happening with that. He is the only person responsible or has any knowledge of what's going on with this project. So I was just trying to get some clarity when it comes to the prison.
And I think the big issue with the prison during the election was, yeah, we do need a new prison, but is a new prison our priority right now? Do we need better prison facilities in front of better hospital and health facilities?
Definitely not. I think the hospital should be first.
In front of better school facilities. For example, you have the Spectrum Center, which is the little center that we have for children in particular with autism, which is housed in a one room at the industrial site daycare center. We located a site for it in Fort Lands, but we still done public works and all of this and financed it to deal with that. Should a new prison be prioritized in front of a center for our kids with autism? And so that really was the question. And if we can give somebody the opportunity to raise $2.4 billion to build a prison, well, we could get into raising money and help us with other things that really should be prioritized.
So what do you...
the airport.
Sorry, go ahead, Gavin.
No, I just had to add in the airport.
Well, see, they're finally get the air conditioned units.
Yes.
I've not been traveling, so I'm happy to hear that.
AC was fixed.
Somebody is asking if you brought forth these ideas.
Well, remember, this is something that came up after this whole prison build out is something that came up after I left government. But certainly, yeah, we were all advocating for different things within our different portfolios as it relates to raising funding for and in terms of priorities, absolutely.
What if the prison is still being built? They still don't work over there.
I have no idea, to be honest.
I have no idea. I have not heard about the prison since election.
And drive the side of the country.
But, Jonel, now that you're out of government and just a citizen like the rest of us.
I was always a citizen.
When I say, I mean not in opposition to make decisions that affects the Federation, as you're not a minister currently. What would you like to see this new government work on first? What are some priority areas that you think, in your opinion, as somebody out of government, what do you think that they should prioritize in the first couple of years in office? Because I have to say yes, because nothing happens overnight, even though people think so.
Oh, people, trust me, people think so. No, I think there needs to be focus on our healthcare system. Improving the infrastructure, and not just infrastructure, but also I think it needs to be. I don't want to offend anybody, but there's a need for training, retraining, or training, additional training of persons. You could have the newest, most state-of-the-art facility, but if the service is not there, then it defeats the purpose. And I'm only going based on feedback. I've not been in hospital in recent times to say, well, I've had a bad experience. I'm just going on feedback. Certainly, we need to continue the work being done in education, get the Bastia High School built. Whether you want to, whether it's old site or new site, we just need the school built.
Honestly.
Right,
You know,
just need to be built.
and to continue.
Yeah, I need to stop going home and looking out my window and having kids look back at me.
So
Very uncomfortable.
We need to do that and improve the infrastructure in the other schools. It was something that I used to bust my brains on. I just think it's the way in which our government is set up, and we're still using this, acting like we're back in 1960s, and we need to think differently. This thing with public works, you have to rate on public works to do everything. Public works does not have the capacity to deal with every hospital and health center, every school, every preschool, every sporting complex, every government building. They don't have the capacity, and that is where I used to argue, for example, for a maintenance department, a dedicated maintenance department within the Ministry of Education, within the Department of Sports, so that they could take care of their own things. But
yeah, I think that's a big issue we have as a country, maintenance.
right,
We love to build things and then feel like the things going to take care of themselves.
exactly. And every community wants a football field, a cricket field, a basketball court, a playground, a pavilion, a stadium, and we don't stop to think about the maintenance and the cost and all of that. But healthcare, education, housing, just build houses. People need houses, and certainly I can always say redevelopment of Bastia. Bastia is running down. Bastia is we have, I can't say getting, we have slum areas in Bastia. These are things that need to be cleaned up, and this helps in terms of the housing, in terms of commercial activity, and ultimately jobs. And all of these things that we're talking about will create jobs, and that is issue number one.
Yeah,
People need to get back out there and get back working. And, making money in the pocket.
Yeah, I agree.
Getting money in the pocket,
I agree.
Yeah,
But Jonel, it was a pleasure having you. I know I've taken up your morning.
Well, not like I had work to go to.
What happened? You want to stay for the rest of the show? Okay, you want to join us in talking about some of our little tea time topics since you're already here?
No, I'm gonna leave you to that. I won't take over your show, but I'm always available to come and sit down and chat and join in the discussions, whether it's politics or something else. I'm always here.
I have one more question. I'm not sure if you would be able to answer it, right? But recently we saw 3 people being pardoned, and that has been a big talking point in the Federation as well. Do you know the process of people being chosen for these pardons, and what are your thoughts on the fact that we aren't aware until it happens? We don't get a heads up. The family doesn't know that this is happening, and it must be hurtful for you to, as a family member of a victim, to just get up one day and see something in a WhatsApp saying, okay, this person who has harmed your family is pardoned. So what are your thoughts on that process? And do you think we can or should be doing that differently?
From what I know, or my personal knowledge of the process, there is the Mercy Committee, and I think we've seen some, as a result of the recent pardons, we've seen some information come out on the Mercy Committee and who makes it up and all of that. I think that was really just throwing people under the bus, by the way.
Listen, that was a little...
I ain't going to water my mouth. That was people throwing other people under the bus. But a lot of it is generated, a lot of the whole debate is generated by a lot of external organizations, international organizations and things like that. Talking about human rights and leaving people. You can't have people in jail for 30, 40, 50 years just like that, languishing and rehabilitation and all of that. It is an issue that goes before the cabinet. It's an issue that came before the cabinet while I was there. there was a list of names that were being considered, which included, I think, it was 3 people who were released and many others. And while there's a mercy committee, the cabinet does have significant input.
They didn't make it seem that way, but
and that's why I said by putting out the information about the mercy committee in the way in which it was done, it was throwing people under the bus.
Yeah, because I swore that they had the cabinet has nothing to do with that. None of the ministers except Eugene Hamilton would have known that this was happening, but that's because that's how it was put out to us.
And as far as I'm aware, Eugene Hamilton was on the mercy committee as a representative of cabinet and the government. And so it is something that came, and forgive me if I don't know the exact where, I don't remember exactly if it is that the mercy committee makes a recommendation to the cabinet and then the cabinet approves, which I think is, but I stand to be corrected, but it certainly did come to the cabinet while I was there, like I said, with a number of the names, and we went through and there were different profiles and what they did, how long they did for, and all of that. And we had rejected it at that point in time. So this is within the last 2 years. But I was surprised to see the pardons come. As I said, from my own information, the families of the victims were never contacted to be warned. They just saw this thing come out on a WhatsApp like the rest of us, and so we fucked out to jail.
Like almost everybody see it by
I literally was like, hold on.
We pat out to jail, and you have to be very careful. You have to be mindful, sensitive of the victims' families. Even if these people are rehabilitated,
And that's a big issue I have. I feel like, what is the process of rehabilitation in the prison system? Because we saw that one of the 3 who were pardoned literally got out and went right back in.
and there you go. And that's exactly the point. I mean, what was the thought process? And then the timing was just...
It was very strange.
It was just very suspect. I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but you do anything controversial like that around elections, it will be scrutinized and seem suspect. So I empathize with the families of the victims and those affected, and I hope they're able to at least deal with this in a way that's not too traumatic. For those, I think it's 2 left now.
Somebody has already left the country, so.
Okay. Well, I just, for their sake and the sakes of the community, I hope that they are, truly rehabilitated and reformed. And that they stay on the straight and narrow. That's all I could hope for.
Yeah. Somebody also said, you don't think if they hurt people at all that would put the released in some danger? I think that could be a point. However, I feel like we have to look at the majority when it comes to situations like this. One person versus a community should be a thought that you have when doing these type of things. Because yes, understandable, we don't want somebody who is truly rehabilitated to be put in danger, but we also don't want a community to be put in danger because somebody isn't rehabilitated in the way that they should be, which we saw. Exactly,
and by that one incident with that one, it casts a shadow and doubt over the entire process, and everybody else. Well, if he make
it out for 2 weeks.
well, how we know the other 2 in the same in the same boat, and so you have to be very particular and very careful with these issues.
Yeah. Well, it is time for us to take a break, and once again, Jonel, it was a pleasure having you as usual to come join us. I know you have lots of free time now.
It's always a pleasure to be here. It's always a pleasure to be here and to share. See, well, as him isn't here, you have a...
He listening, man. He listening.
you have a co-host, a guest co-host. I hope he starts supporting a proper football team now.
Oh, dear.
No mercy.
But we won't.
You know what, you deserve it.
We ain't
You
going
deserve
to
it.
do. We ain't
No, we
going
ain't gonna. Thanks for you again.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about, so I gotta keep out.
Well, what I will say is, Gavin supports is Arsenal.
Yes, I do support Arsenal.
I
Football
think
Club.
there's a little football team called Arsenal. I support
In the
Manchester
north of
United, and I'll share a joke that I share because we're in a group chat.
Oh, dear.
And just this past week, and well, Manchester United hasn't started off too well. West Indies has been tying up themselves, and I had to say in the group, boy, between PAM, West Indies and Manchester United, I ain't having a good month of August at all.
No, he was having a good one.
They're fully stressing you out.
August
Listen,
will fight.
at least you have the Patriots to look forward to.
Well, see where my
I
Patriots
realize,
shut, so
I realize.
I'm hoping and praying that we can come and repeat.
Yes.
Or at least have good showings while they're here in St. Kitts.
At
Well,
least.
we have the whole of the 60, which is something
Yes.
new and something to look forward for. So hopefully the whole of that is in St. Kitts. So hopefully we could start off by winning that and then move forward.
Yeah, give you something to wake you up because you've been having a rough one. We understand. It's okay.
No, man, I'm good. I'm still here. But thanks for having me. Everybody have a good weekend, a safe weekend. And as him says, well, as him said, boy.
Which one of the things? Deal with people with grace or
No.
you can't be everybody's cup of tea?
Yeah, because you're not a mug.
Guys, we'll be right back with more ILNT. Stick and stay to WINNMedia SKN.